Part 1. Just a barber. The room went quiet for half a second. Not because of respect, but because of laughter. He's just a barber, my son-in-law said loudly, lifting his glass as if he'd told a clever joke. Cuts hair, that's it. More chuckles followed. Polite ones. Uncomfortable ones. I smiled. After 70 years of life, you learn something important. Never correct people who are underestimating you. We were gathered at a formal dinner. White tablecloths, soft music, important guests. Business owners, local politicians. His kind of people. He liked introductions that elevated him. Meet my father-in-law, he continued. Old school barber, retired, keeps busy, I guess. I nodded at the guests, calm, unbothered. Inside, though, a familiar clock had started ticking. Because I knew something he didn't. I spent 38 years behind a barber chair. But not all haircuts are just haircuts. Some clients talk. Some clients trust. Some clients forget who's listening. And some chairs are placed exactly where the government needs them to be. My son-in-law leaned closer to a guest and added, lowering his voice just enough to be heard. Sweet guy, but you know, nothing special. I took a sip of water, still smiling. That's when my phone vibrated in my jacket pocket. Once, twice, then a third time, persistent. I didn't check it right away. Old habits. When you've worked a life where real calls matter, you don't rush. You wait for the right moment. Finally, I excused myself politely and stepped away from the table. The screen showed a name I hadn't seen in years. Director H. Morris. I answered. Yes? There was no greeting on the other end, only words spoken with urgency and respect. Sir, this is Director Morris. We need to confirm your identity immediately. I glanced back through the glass doors. My son-in-law was still laughing. I said calmly into the phone, Go ahead. The director paused, then said the words that would end the evening very differently than it had begun. Are you the same individual listed under federal clearance file? Barber 17? I closed my eyes briefly. Yes, I replied. That's me. There was silence. Then, Sir, we're on our way. I put the phone back in my pocket and returned to the table. My son-in-law raised an eyebrow. Everything okay, Barber? I smiled wider this time. Perfect, I said, because in a few minutes, everyone in that room was about to learn why some people prefer being underestimated. If you enjoy powerful stories about hidden identities, quiet strength and shocking reversals, make sure to subscribe. This story has only just begun. Coming in part 2. The FBI arrives right in the middle of dinner, and my son-in-law realizes the joke he made was the worst mistake of his life. Part 2. When the doors opened. The laughter didn't stop right away. Wine glasses clinked. A waiter passed by with appetizers. My son-in-law leaned back in his chair, proud of himself, soaking in the attention like a man who believed the room belonged to him. I sat quietly, waiting. 3 minutes later, the sound changed. Not voices, engines. Low, controlled, multiple vehicles pulling up at once. Someone near the window frowned. Is there an event next door? Before anyone could answer, the front doors of the venue opened. 2 men entered first. Dark suits, earpieces, eyes that scanned the room without turning their heads. Conversations began to die mid-sentence. Then a third man stepped in. Tall, gray-haired, calm authority in every movement. The manager rushed forward, whispering urgently. The man showed a badge. The color drained from the manager's face. I'm looking for Mr. Samuel Reed, the man said clearly. My son-in-law froze. That was my name. Slowly, every head in the room turned toward me. I stood up. Yes, I said. That's me. The man walked straight to me and extended his hand. Director Henry Morris, he said. Federal Bureau of Investigation. You could hear a pin drop. He lowered his voice, but not enough to hide the words. Sir, thank you for answering the call. We needed to verify your identity in person. My son-in-law's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. You, he stammered, looking from me to the badge. This is a joke, right? Director Morris turned to him slowly. Sir, he said flatly, this is not a setting where we joke. I shook the director's hand calmly. Good to see you again, I said. Again. That word landed harder than anything else. One of the guests whispered, Again? Director Morris nodded. Mr. Reed has assisted federal operations for decades. Some of the most sensitive ones. My son-in-law stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly across the floor. He's a barber, he said weakly. He told me I was a barber, I corrected gently. The director glanced at me with the faintest smile. A very effective cover, he said. A few gasps rippled through the room. Another agent stepped forward, holding a tablet. Sir, we'll need a few minutes of your time. There's a matter that's resurfaced. I nodded. Of course. As we turned toward a quieter corner, my son-in-law rushed after us. Wait, he said, his voice cracking. You can't just, who are you? I stopped and looked at him. For the first time that night, I dropped the polite smile. I'm exactly who I've always been, I said. You just never bothered to ask. His face went pale, because in that moment, he realized something far worse than embarrassment. He had spent years mocking a man whose name was written in files he would never be allowed to read. Coming in part 3, the director reveals why they came tonight, and how my son-in-law's own words may have just put him on the wrong side of a federal investigation. Part 3, the reason they came. Director Morris didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. When a man has authority, silence does the work for him. We didn't come here by coincidence, he said, guiding me toward a quieter corner of the room. 2 agents subtly positioned themselves nearby, not blocking anyone, just present. The guests pretended not to stare. No one succeeded. My son-in-law hovered a few steps away, frozen between panic and disbelief. Sir, the director continued, lowering his voice, 3 weeks ago, a name surfaced in an old file. A name only 4 people in the country should recognize. He paused. Yours. I nodded slowly. I figured it would eventually. One of the agents opened the tablet. On the screen were scanned documents, old, yellowed, stamped, classified in bold red letters. Operation dates from decades ago. Code names. Locations that never appeared on maps. My son-in-law craned his neck, trying to see. He couldn't. The agent angled the screen away from him without a word. Why now? I asked. The director's jaw tightened. Because someone tried to access that file without clearance. The room seemed to shrink. Who? I asked quietly. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned slowly toward my son-in-law. Sir, Director Morris said, his tone professional but sharp. What do you do for a living? My son-in-law swallowed. I'm in international logistics, shipping, consulting. The director nodded. And recently you attended a conference in Prague, then Istanbul, then Dubai. That wasn't a question. My son-in-law's face went white. How do you know that? He whispered. Because, the director replied, your name appeared in proximity to an unauthorized query involving Mr. Reed's clearance file. A murmur rippled through the guests now. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was something else. I didn't do anything illegal. My son-in-law blurted. I was just networking. Sit down, the director said calmly. My son-in-law sat. Hard. I looked at him then, not with anger, not with triumph, but with something closer to disappointment. "You've been careless," I said softly, "and careless people draw attention." He looked up at me, eyes wide. "You never told me." "I never needed to," I replied. "My past was buried for a reason." Director Morris nodded. "Mr. Reed helped dismantle a network that never fully disappeared. Tonight we're here because pieces of it may be moving again." He turned back to me. "We need to ask you a few questions, privately." I glanced once more at the table where my son-in-law sat, surrounded by guests who no longer knew how to look at him. Then I stood. "Let's talk," I said. As we stepped away, I heard someone whisper behind us, "That Barber. Who was he really?" I didn't answer, because the truth was heavier than any punchline. And my son-in-law was just beginning to understand that some jokes don't fade away. They echo. Coming in Part 4, The Private Conversation, reveals a past mission that never truly ended, and a decision I made long ago that may now put my family in danger.
Part 4. The File That Was Never Closed. The private room the director led me into wasn't truly private. No room ever is when the FBI is involved. 2 agents stayed near the door. Another swept the corners with his eyes, muscle memory from years of training. Director Morris removed his jacket slowly, as if time itself had decided to slow down. "Sit," he said. I did. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was respectful. The kind you give a man whose past you've read but can't fully understand. "You're older than the file suggests," the director said finally. I smiled faintly. "Files don't age." "People do." He nodded. "We never updated it because we never closed it." That sentence carried weight. "Barber 17 was marked inactive," he continued, sliding a thin folder across the table. "Not resolved." I didn't open it yet. I already knew what was inside. Names, faces, a network built on whispers, favors, and secrets exchanged in places where no one thought they were being watched. "You dismantled the top layer," Morris said. "But organizations like that don't die. They shed skin." One of the agents spoke for the first time. 3 weeks ago, someone attempted to access your clearance history using a foreign proxy server. It failed, but it triggered alerts tied to your old code. I exhaled slowly. "So they're checking if I'm still alive?" "Yes," Morris replied, "and whether you're still useful." I leaned back. "I retired for a reason, and we respected that," he said quickly, "for decades. But now your name is back in circulation." I thought of my son-in-law, his travel schedule, his careless arrogance, the way he liked to feel important in rooms full of strangers. "Who tried to access the file?" I asked. Morris hesitated. "We're not certain yet, but we know how they got close." "How?" "Through family." That word hit harder than any accusation. "Your son-in-law's business," the director continued carefully, "puts him near people who trade information without realizing its value. They ask questions. They name-drop. Sometimes they listen." I closed my eyes briefly. "He talks too much," I said. "Yes," Morris agreed. And someone noticed. The room went quiet again. "What do you need from me?" I asked. The director met my gaze directly. "We need you to confirm whether certain people from your past are still alive, and whether the decisions you made back then could be exploited now." I opened the folder. Inside were photographs I hadn't seen in years. Some I hoped never to see again. Men who'd smiled at me while planning violence. Women who'd pretended to be victims while passing messages. A map marked with cities where haircuts once bought trust. One picture made my jaw tighten. "Victor Hale," I said quietly. Morris nodded. "He resurfaced in Eastern Europe. Financial ties. Shadow companies." "He was supposed to be dead," I said. "He was supposed to stay buried," Morris corrected. I looked up. "And now you think he's circling my family?" "Yes." I laughed once, short and humorless. "I spent my life keeping that world away from them." "And you succeeded," Morris said. "Until now." "Why, when we left the room, the dinner was effectively over." Guests whispered. Phones buzzed. The atmosphere had shifted from gossip to fear. My son-in-law sat alone at the table, staring at his drink like it might explain everything. He looked up when he saw me. "Dad," he started. I raised a hand. "Not here," I said calmly. "And not tonight." Director Morris addressed the room briefly, professionally. "This event is concluded. Thank you for your cooperation. No explanations, no apologies." The agents moved with quiet efficiency. The doors opened. Cold night air rushed in. Before I stepped outside, my son-in-law spoke again, his voice shaking. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear." I looked at him. For the first time I wasn't angry. I was afraid. "Not knowing," I said softly, "doesn't mean you're not responsible." Then I walked out. "Where?" Outside, Morris paused beside me. "We'll need to talk again," he said. "Soon." I nodded. I figured. He hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth. Your cover saved more lives than anyone will ever know." I watched the city lights flicker in the distance. "And now?" I asked. "Now," he said, "we see whether the past is done with you." I knew the answer already. Because some lives don't really end when you retire. They just wait. Well, coming in part 5. A hidden connection between my son-in-law and an international investigation comes to light, and I'm forced to choose between protecting my family or reopening a life I buried decades ago. Part 5. The choice I never wanted to make. I didn't sleep that night, not because of fear, but because of memory. When you've lived a life built on pretending, sleep becomes optional the moment the past knocks again. I sat in the dark living room long after midnight, the house quiet except for the ticking clock on the wall. Every sound felt louder than it should have been. Every shadow felt familiar. At 2:17 a.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said. Part 5. The choice I never wanted to make. I didn't sleep that night, not because of fear, but because of memory. When you've lived a life built on pretending, sleep becomes optional the moment the past knocks again. I sat in the dark living room long after midnight, the house quiet except for the ticking clock on the wall. Every sound felt louder than it should have been. Every shadow felt familiar. At 2:17 a.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said. "Sir," Director Morris said quietly, "we confirmed something, and you need to hear it before the sun comes up." I closed my eyes. "Go on." "Your son-in-law's company wasn't just adjacent to suspicious activity," he said. "It was used indirectly as a transit layer. Shipping records, digital manifests, clean enough to pass routine checks." My chest tightened. "He didn't know," I said automatically. "That's possible," Morris replied, "but ignorance doesn't erase impact." I rubbed my forehead. "Who's behind it?" There was a pause. Victor Hale," Morris said, "and 2 others from your old network. They've been testing the perimeter, seeing what still reacts. And now they know my name still does," I said. "Yes." Silence stretched between us. Then Morris asked the question I'd been dreading. "We need you to advise us." I laughed softly. "I'm 71 years old, and you're still the only person who understands how they think," he replied. "You built the framework we're still using." I stood and walked to the window, staring out at the dark street. "My family didn't sign up for this," I said. "No," Morris agreed, "but they may already be in it." That was the line, the one that forced my hand. The next morning, I called my son-in-law. He answered on the first ring. "Dad," he said quickly, "please." I didn't know any of this was happening. "I believe you," I replied. He exhaled sharply. "Thank God." "But," I continued, "believing you doesn't make this go away." He was silent. "You like rooms where important people gather," I said calmly. "You like feeling relevant." "Yes," he admitted. "And that made you visible," I said, "to people you should never have been visible to." His voice cracked. "Am I in trouble?" I closed my eyes. "Yes," I said honestly, "but not the kind you think." That afternoon, I met with Director Morris again. This time not in a restaurant. In a secured federal office. Maps covered the walls. Names I hadn't heard in decades were written in dry erase marker like they'd never left. "They're moving money again," Morris said. "Quietly, through familiar routes." I studied the map. "They won't stop," I said. "Not unless they think I'm back." Morris looked at me sharply. "You're suggesting—" "I reappear," I finished. "Just enough to draw their attention." "That puts you in danger," he said. "I've lived with danger before," I replied. "What I won't live with is my family paying for my silence." He nodded slowly. "Once you step in," he warned, "there's no pretending again." I smiled faintly. "I've been pretending long enough." That evening, I sat my daughter and son-in-law down. No FBI, no raised voices, just truth. "I had another life," I said, "one I buried to protect you." They listened. When I finished, my daughter was crying. My son-in-law looked hollow. "I never meant—" he began. "I know," I said, "but intention doesn't undo consequence." He swallowed. "What happens now?" I met his eyes. "Now," I said, "you listen, and you do exactly what you're told. No improvising, no networking, no secrets." He nodded. "Yes, sir," he whispered. For the first time, he meant it. Later that night, I sent a message I never thought I'd send again. A single encrypted line. A name. A location. A signal only 3 people in the world would recognize. Within minutes, my phone buzzed. Seen, that was all. The game had restarted. Not because I wanted it to, but because some rules don't disappear when you retire. They wait. Coming in part 6. My reappearance sends a signal across borders, and Victor Hale responds in a way that proves he never stopped watching me.